Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. And welcome this afternoon to our Mastermind. And as Chris said, this is more a Q&A session. So if any of you've got any questions relating to any parts of your business, you feel free to put questions in the chat, and I'll try and answer as many questions as possible. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Andrew Patricio, and I've always been a business owner. But for the last 26 years, I've been educating and training business owners. And you know, it's interesting when you spend a lot of time with business owners, how much you learn. And I had that opportunity this morning. Actually, the idea, just before I carry on, the idea of masterminds, or the word mastermind, it really comes from spending time with other business owners and learning from them. You know, so maybe a group of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 business owners meet and discuss different challenges they having in their business. And what I did this morning, which is very unusual for me, but I was up at 4:45 this morning to go for a walk with 2 entrepreneurs. And we walk about 8 kilometers. It's all along the seafront, and it's absolutely beautiful, really, really beautiful view. But the most important thing for me is not the walk, even though I really enjoyed that and took some great photos of the sunrise this morning and things. The important part for me is the sharing. You know, the one thing I've realized about business is that, firstly, nobody knows everything. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as your business grows and evolves, different challenges come up. You know, sometimes it's cash flow, other times it's HR, other times it's, I don't know, getting customers, but there are different unique challenges. And I think one thing about entrepreneurs is, I presume not all of us, but a lot of us like sharing our knowledge, sharing our experience, sharing some of our challenges with people that can understand and relate to what we're doing. So here's a bit of advice to all of you. You don't have to wake up at 4:45 in the morning, but what I encourage you to do is to spend time with other entrepreneurs. And if you can go for a walk with another entrepreneur, I think it's brilliant. And it's going to be a long walk, not like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour. You need to walk for an hour. I think that's so good for you. The other thing I was reading recently, which I found very, very interesting, is this guy wrote this book about, you know, spending 12 hours on your own just walking. So you wake up at, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning, and you walk till 8 at night, or wake up at 5 in the morning or 5 in the evening. And the idea is to sometimes just to be on your own, just to think through some of the challenges that you and I go through as business owners. And I want you to understand is that every single one of us, doesn't matter how many years we've been in business, we struggle. We struggle at different times. We struggle with, getting our businesses right. We struggle with cash flow. We struggle, even experienced business owners. I mean, these people I was walking with this morning, phenomenally successful, global. They built global businesses, but still struggle with different things, and just need somebody to listen to them. So I want to encourage you to do that as a business owner. The next thing I'm going to discuss, which is the topic of today's session, is how to become more productive. You know, the one thing I've learned that there are certain people that you'll give them 5 hours and they will fill 5 hours. And I don't know if anybody's worked with somebody that's super fast and very efficient, but we create a lot of video content, and I work with Marco, and some of you maybe have met Marco on some of these webinars or seen some of the content he's created on the My Main Street website. But he is super productive when we're working. And I find that when you're working with super productive people, they can sometimes produce in the same amount of time as somebody else, a few other people, actually more than one person, they can produce that themselves. And I want you to understand that your objective as a business owner, as a manager, as somebody that works with people, is to improve your productivity. Because the reality is that every single one of us, doesn't matter who we are, have the same amount of hours every day. And what you want to try and avoid doing, which is something you're going to be very, very careful of, is that we keep working. We work these long, extended hours, thinking that this is the way we're going to produce and this is the way we're going to succeed. And it's true, it's sometimes in your business. There's no doubt in my mind, there's sometimes in your business, you're going to have to work long hours and do things, work many hours that you don't want to be working. But the reality is you can't keep doing that. So one of the things you want to do is to become more productive. So what I'm going to try and share with you today are some of the things that I've learned from business owners. So when I knew I was hosting this session today, I asked other business owners. I went to other business owners and I said to them, how do you become more productive? Or how can I become more productive? And just remember, as we go along, if you've got any questions, you can post them in the chat. But these were responses from business owners, some really successful business owners that I've known for quite a few years. And I really like them and trust them. And it's amazing how much you can learn from people that you like and trust. And the first thing, and we touched on this on Tuesday, is to ensure that you set very, very clear goals. And I think this is really, really important that you understand this as a business owner, that you are the leader. And this is your main job. You've got to understand this. This is your main thing. This is your main function. This is your main objective, is to make sure that you have very, very clear goals. And if you want your employees to be productive, they need to be very, very clear on exactly what they need to do. So, for example, if I'm working on a project, which I often am, I often work on big projects, small projects. Every person that works on my team needs to be very, very clear what I want them to achieve. And secondly, what our priorities are. Because you've got to be very, very careful of that, is that, people can waste time on things that are not relevant. I was speaking to somebody this morning, and he works with a lot of young people. And I said to him, that's very, very challenging. And he said, if you're organized, if you're very, very clear on what your goals and your priorities are, actually working with kids is not that difficult. I said, I'm sure for you, but not for me. But he used an example of people that he works with. So he leads a team of coaches. In this case, it's in a school, a very, very interesting school where all the learning is online. And then the kids will get instructional coaching or encouragement from what they call learning coaches. And he says that, when you're working with people, the more clear they are of what's got to be achieved, the better it is. And the second thing is priorities. So he was giving a very, very good example that I liked. He said that, sometimes, some of the learning coaches focus on the wrong things. They'll say, for example, a couple of the kids came in late this morning, and one of the kids was using a pen instead of a pencil, and things like that are not relevant to the ongoing instruction. And his question was really, really simple, to these learning coaches, is, are they achieving the results required? And the coaches said, yes. So he said, focus on that. And I think this is really, really important. Well, I'll give you another example that I heard this morning too. This guy used to own restaurants. and he said he'd arrive, he'd randomly arrive at his restaurant. So he had a few restaurants, he'd randomly arrive there and walk into the restaurant and get really irritated because somebody wasn't doing this right, or somebody wasn't doing that right, whatever it is. And this just created anxiety for him. And so the rest of the day, he'd be stressed because he went to the restaurant and they weren't making the burgers properly, or the fries weren't properly cooked, or whatever it is, whatever the challenge was. And so what he decided to do, which was a very, very simple thing, is when he drove to his restaurants, he made sure that everyone, or at least the manager, saw him, arriving. So they'd see him arriving, so he could go to all the employees and say, you know what, the boss is arriving, let's make sure that. And he found that so much better, because he was in a better mind space. He wasn't stressed and things like that. And this is something you got to learn to do, is ultimately, we want to set very clear goals for ourselves. And we want to make sure that our employees are very, very clear on exactly what goals we want to achieve and what are our priorities. So you want to focus on the most important thing. Are we generating revenue? Is it profitable? Are our customers happy? Are our employees motivated? I think if you focus on that, it makes your life so much easier. The problem, I think, sometimes is we focusing on a bit of detail. Somebody was saying to me the other day is people with my type of personality are not too focused on detail. So I find that very, very often, obviously depending on the field, that business owners are not perfectionists. Because the key here is to get things done well. That doesn't mean get things done perfectly, because I think perfectionism can be quite dangerous. So being very, very clear on what your goals are and your priorities, and make sure that everybody that works with you is clear on that. You can even start the day like that. These are the projects we need to work on. These are the goals we want to achieve. These are the things we want to focus on, and get everybody behind us. And I want you to understand this. I mentioned another example on Tuesday, but it's worth repeating. I know a very, very successful business owner, and I've known her for, 26 years, I think, as long as I've been training business owners, because she was on one of my first programs. And what she did recently, she decided to go on a sabbatical for 3 months. So travel to Europe, and then went through to Australia and just took time off of her business, which I don't always understand that, because I've never needed time away from my business, but maybe I have a different business. Maybe it's not as stressful as her business. But what she did was, before she went on this trip, what she did is she set every single one of her employees very, very clear goals. This was the key. She sat down with each one of them and said, what are the goals that you're going to achieve over the next 90 days while I'm away? And the interesting thing was, while she was away, they had their best month ever. She's been in business for 29 years. This was the best month ever when she wasn't here. And I think this is quite an important thing for two reasons. One is that setting clear goals and expectations is a really good idea, firstly. And secondly, sometimes as business owners, I think we get in the way of our employees being really, really good. And I think that's what you've got to just be very, very careful of. Especially those of us that micromanage or always checking up on employees and things like that. We could be affecting people's productivity because we're just bugging them too much. And this is what you got to be careful of. This is something that I learned quite a long time ago. I was a retailer for 11 years. And when I was a retailer, being on time, obviously opening the store in the morning and things like that was important. But when I started this business, it even became more important. And it's really interesting how you learn from different businesses. I've said this many times, and I'll say this many times on my workshops, is that it doesn't matter what business you operate, or doesn't matter what business you run, the basic principles are the same. And I know people will say things like, when even after I've said that, they'll say to me, but that's right, but my business is different. And I don't think any person's business is different. We're basically all in the same business. We make stuff, or we have services that we sell, and we want our customers to pay for it. Basically, that is the business all of us are in. Doesn't matter what we're doing, that's the business we're in. But the one thing I've realized is that a very, very simple daily to-do list, a piece of paper and a pen. I always have a piece of paper with me. I always have a pen with me. I actually, many times over the year, said that I use a pen to think. So I'll take out a pen and I'll write down things, the thoughts that I have in my head. And I encourage you to do the same thing, because what happens, and actually, here's a very interesting example. I don't know if any of you know of Richard Branson and maybe read some of his books, but this is something that he did. And I've got a feeling I probably copied it from him, because what he used to do, he used to buy notebooks and then keep them in his top pocket. And every single time he had a thought about something, an idea of thought, he'd write it down. But he'd do the same thing for things that he needed to do. Because if you like me, and I'm not sure if it's an age thing, but if you like me, if I know what needs to be done, I just write it down. And a very simple example, I'm currently traveling in Europe, and I will regularly go to the supermarket every day. That's the way I travel. I'll sometimes eat out, but you can't just be eating out all the time, because it's a pain in the ass. Anyway, so even then, I will create a list. So when I go to the supermarket, I will have a list of stuff that I need to buy. And what happens is, when I get home, I've got all the stuff. And it's really interesting. In retailing, we realized that people that bought with the lists often saved money. And the reason they saved money, they were very, very clear on exactly what they needed to buy. So if somebody came into our store without a list, we got quite excited. If somebody came into the store with a list, we weren't that excited, because people with lists only buy what they need, because that's what they've written down. And people that don't have lists tend to buy shiny objects. They'll go around and they'll see a special, for example, on, I don't know, cans of tuna, and then they'll think, do I have cans of tuna at home? And they'll say, I'm not sure if I have cans of tuna. And then they will buy cans of tuna. And the reason they do this is, firstly, they don't know what they have at home. And secondly, they don't have a plan, or they don't have a list, or they don't have whatever. So you want to do the same thing in your business, is get into a habit of every single day. That's how you start your day. And I want you to understand that every single day, that's how you start your day. And if you're not sure if it works, I encourage you to try. I encourage you to try and to write it down. And, at the end of the day, start going through these things that you've done. And two things are going to happen. It's almost like this sense of accomplishment. For me, it is anyway, or the sense of achievement. This is what I planned to do today. This is what I did. And for some of you, it's going to change your life. It really, really is. And the sooner you can get your employees to do this, the better it is. They're going to become more productive, because they're very, very clear on what needs to be done. And if you know anybody that is disorganized and things like that, you'll realize they try and memorize things too much. And that's one of the challenges, is because we try and memorize things, we'll forget a couple of things. So writing things down is a really, really good idea. The second thing you want to do, which is really key, is to create structure for yourself. I don't know if you remember when you were at school or university, but they give you a timetable. They'll say, on Monday you do this, on Tuesday you do this, on Wednesday you do this. And it's really, really interesting how humans work when they've got structure. They just know what needs to be done. And this is the part you need to understand, is that's the value of having a weekly plan and then sticking to it, because then you get the things that are important to do done. And that's one of the ways to manage your time effectively, because the thing is, you want to allocate time for the things that are important. I'm going to write a blog post, and then I'm going to do some merchandising. Then I'm going to, I don't know, do the cash up for yesterday because a couple of the employees came through. And if you write these things down and then you stick to them, you will become far more productive. Because ultimately, for the retailers on this program, what you want to do is you want to be with your customers. That's what you want to be. You don't want to be in the back room, spending time working on bookkeeping and things like that. And actually, it's quite an important thing, to even prioritize, when you're going to be doing things that don't impact your customer time. So you want to make sure that you find time, maybe the quiet time in your business, to do things like, for example, administration, to do ordering, those type of things. Those are the things you want to do. But creating lists, I think, is the key. And again, I was speaking to the same guy this morning, the coaches, and I said to him, he said, you know what, everybody says, they wish they could have a piece of me. And I said, well, they can't have a piece of you. That's just not how things work. I said, but if you want to replicate yourself, the only way you can replicate yourself and teach people these skills is by writing them down. So create a template for them. He was giving me a very, very simple example. He was saying that, when you sit down with kids and ask them questions, it's amazing how much they reveal. And he said, they reveal more to me than to the other coaches. And I said, that's a problem, because then you have to be there all the time. So what you want to do is you want to create a process, a system, a to-do list, a weekly plan, so that your coaches make sure that they allocate time to really counsel these kids. And I want you to understand, as an employer, as somebody that runs their own business, often I think that's our job. I really think that's our job sometimes, is counseling people, trying to understand, what challenges people are having, doing their work or even in their personal lives, and trying to help them overcome these things so that they can become better employees and more productive. So these are some of the tasks that we need to do, and something that makes us more effective. On Tuesday, I spoke about the importance of delegating. And I want you to understand, this is the only way you can scale a business. And again, these two business owners that I spent time with this morning, this one guy specifically, it's really his way of operating. He's opened like 50 little branches of his business in a very quick time, in the last 2 years. Now on Saturday, he's going to Bangalore. Then he's coming back, and then he's going to an island just off the coast of West Africa. And I found it really, really interesting, because I think you get different types of entrepreneurs. And one of the things he said to me, which was really interesting, was that he is a really good counselor and coach. And he said, what I do with this guy is I give him tasks, and then I just leave him to do what he does really well. And I think this is exactly how your business grows. This is exactly how your employees become more productive, is you give them tasks and you let them do what you employed them to do. And if you do not trust them to do their job, well, maybe they're not the right person. But if you want to grow, or if you want to scale, there's no way you can micromanage. And the same guy gave another example, is that he decided a few years ago, very interesting personality, he decided a few years ago to take a year off. So to take a whole year off from his business. Really interesting story. So what he did is he brought in a CEO, and travel around the world with these kids, and even took a teacher with them. So they took a teacher and they traveled around with them. I think, when you're taking teachers traveling around you through the world, you must have quite a bit of money. Anyway, but he was speaking about handing over to the CEO. And it's really interesting. Since he took that trip overseas for a year, he appointed a new CEO and just doesn't even participate in the business, has a meeting once a week. Can you believe it? A massive business, advertising business, employs over 500 people. And all he does is have a meeting with his management once a week on Monday mornings at 9 o'clock. So the key here is to learn how to delegate. That's really what you got to learn to do, because then you can grow and scale your business. And it also allows you to focus on the most important things in your business, which are growing sales and making profit. Your job is to focus on leading. And this example of this guy that I'm speaking about is a great example, because, if this was just a small business, obviously he started off as a small business, like all of us do. I know his whole story, but he started off, had a massive failure in another business, almost went bankrupt, started this new business, and then scaled it quite quickly. That seems to be the thing he likes doing. And that's why I find him a really interesting personality, because he tells me different stories, which gives me a lot of interesting stuff that I can discuss in different webinars and seminars. But here's the key, is that if you want people to be productive, you're not going to micromanage them. Because if somebody has the skills, why would you go and check up on them? And if they don't have the skills, you need to train them or send them on courses or training programs or whatever it is, so that they can acquire the skills. And then you don't have to micromanage them. And this is exactly what you want to be doing. And the sooner you can do it, the better it is for you. Sooner you can get into this mode, into this way of managing, into this way of structuring your business, you're going to become a better manager and get more done as soon as possible. One of the things that we do, or I help do, is my son Daniel runs a very successful e-commerce business, and he's run for the last 7 years. And it's really interesting because he's very technology focused. And the reason is really quite simple. Firstly, he was an early Shopify employee, which taught him how to use technology. But secondly, he doesn't have time. So he doesn't have time. He's got 2 daughters. He's got the e-commerce business, and he's got this app that he's built recently. So what he's learned to do is to seek out technology that can automate repetitive tasks. And I'll give you one very good example. One of the challenges he was having was projecting order quantities, because one of the things you don't want to do if you sell a product is order too much stuff, but you also don't want to order too little stuff. So what he did was he found this app, actually encouraged these guys to build this app, which is a forecasting app. That's exactly what it does. It checks your sales and then creates forecasts for you